All right, now we're joined by John Creighton, who's running for re-election to the Port Commission, position 1. So go ahead with a 2-minute introduction.
Oh, good evening. My name is John Creighton. I'm running for position 1 on the Seattle Port Commission. I've been really privileged to be in that position for 3 terms now. I'm running for re-election, and I was proud to have the endorsement of the 36. I think my last at least 2 elections, and I would be honored to have it for my re-election. And when I was first elected in 2005, you know, if you told me I'd be running for a 4th term, I would have told you to shoot me. I do think elected officials should self-regulate. I do think new blood and new perspective is good, although you know, your perspective changes as you. And I think we have a really good commission. I'm really proud. You know, in the past we've had Democratic majorities on the Port Commission, but last few years we've had a real progressive Democratic majority on the Port Commission. So it's easier working with this majority to get good things pushed forward at the port. So I'm enjoying that. And also our airport is growing like mad, and you know, which is a really exciting opportunity in terms of jobs creation for our region. But there are huge impacts on the communities around the airport. And I've spent a lot of time in those communities, and I believe I've been able to really moderate staffs. You know, if you're on airport staff, all you care about is how do we make the airport run, which is a good thing for our region. But you also have to consider the environmental and health and community impacts of large, heavy transportation operations like that. And I think I'm a good advocate in moving us forward in a sustainable way. Just because a lot of exciting things are happening at the port right now where I feel I can still make a difference, I've decided to run for re-election.
Great, thank you. So now we have our 4 prepared questions that we're asking all port candidates, and you have to feel free to over. These are 2-minute answers, and David, would you read number 1?
Yes. What is your plan to keep the Port of Seattle competitive when other ports offer similar services at lower cost?
You know, I think we made an important step forward when we formed the Seaport Alliance with Tacoma. I've long been an advocate of port cooperation between Seattle and Tacoma. It doesn't make sense using taxpayer money to duplicate infrastructure. It might have made sense 100 years ago when we were much further apart, but now we're one big megalopolis. And so that we're working together. We're operating with one voice, which is good for, you know, going to the legislature, going to the railroads, going to the shippers. We're not duplicating infrastructure. There are 2 issues that are external to the ports, which I think are critical to our competitiveness going forward. Number 1, rail rates. You know, the railroads in the Northwest are basically a duopoly between the Union Pacific and the Burlington Northern. Their rail rates per container are about $300 per container more than the Canadian National Railway that goes from, you know, Prince Rupert, Vancouver, all the way across Canada down to International Falls, Minnesota. Also, the harbor maintenance tax. We're a beautifully, naturally deep water harbor in the Puget Sound, so we don't benefit from those dredging. Those funds are allocated towards dredging, mainly southeast ports like New Orleans or Georgia or South Carolina. Our shippers pay about $110 on average a container for the harbor maintenance tax. We only get 1 penny back for every dollar they put in. So that puts us at a competitive disadvantage. We've been working with Senators Cantwell and Murray to change that, but we need to change those 2 issues to remain competitive. But in terms of natural infrastructure, I mean, we're a naturally deep water port, particularly Seattle. We're right at the intersection of 2 interstates, I-90, I-5, and have on-dock railroads. I think we're perfectly positioned going forward.
Great. Liz, number 2.
What is your position on the leasing of port facilities to oil drilling operations?
You know, I supported that. I supported the Shell Oil Arctic exploration lease, and I think a lot of people were surprised because, at least until Commissioner Feldman came on the commission, I believe I had the best reputation among the environmental community. But you know, if it's a matter of cleaning up water in Elliott Bay or cleaning up the air in our harbor, I've never been afraid to push business on those issues. And in fact, you know, that's why the last 2 re-elections I've been opposed by the Pacific Merchant Shipping Association. But with the Shell Oil Arctic exploration fleet, it was $7 million a year in rent for a terminal that is currently dark, that costs us $250,000 just to carry. It was 400 good paying industrial jobs. And then the environmental issue, I think, I don't support drilling in the Arctic, but we weren't making that decision, President Obama was. So if we didn't take the business, it would have gone to Tacoma, it would have gone to Port Angeles. So I came out in favor of what a lot of the industrial unions were in favor of the lease. I know a lot of the environmental community was disappointed, and I can understand their view that it's more than just symbolism. And I think going forward, we erred in not having better public process, more of an airing, because even though it was a lease that was within staff's authority to just go forward with, without commission approval, because it was only a 2-year temporary lease, it was something that was of great importance to the community. So I believe we should have had a much longer public comment period looking back on it, and that's something that I'm working with my colleagues to change.
Brittany, number 3.
What changes or reforms do you support for the Port Commission itself?
That's a good question, and I think we've made a lot of headway. When I was first elected 12 years ago, the CEO really controlled the port. I mean, it was more the CEO running the port than the commission, and the CEO had an iron fist on information flow to and from the commission from staff. Staff couldn't talk to us without his approval, really. And since then, we've changed, and we didn't have any of our own staff. Now we have we had a chief of staff who was basically just a rat for the CEO. Now we have a real chief of staff. We have a research analyst who's a really smart kid who came over from DC, Eleanor Holmes Norton's staff. We have 3, sort of, for lack of a better word, sort of body people that will assist commissioners, when they're out in the community giving presentations and whatnot. And so we have a good capability, and then we have the internal audit team actually reporting to the commission audit committee and not the CEO. So that's an important thing as well, because with our past audit issues, we've really developed a top-notch internal audit program that, as a board, we can't be there 24/7 watching every decision of the staff, but having an audit team that back checks what the staff is doing and reports to the commission has been a huge change. I know some people say that, and also I think paying commissioners, a salary of, it's now equivalent to state legislators, $46,000, $48,000 a year, whatever it is. I think that's because it's more than just the board position. I don't think it's necessarily a full-time job, but you need the flexibility. I was chair last year. It was a full-time job, and I think it needs to be a full-time job to move these issues forward.
Right, Jason, number 4.
Do you believe we have achieved full transparency in the port's contracting and compensation practices? And where do you see possibilities for further improvement?
I think in terms of transparency is important, but also I'm a firm believer that everyone in King County pays taxes into the port. All communities should benefit from the prosperity created by the port. And I've been very disappointed in our small minority and women-owned business contracting programs. I think we could do much, much better. And that's another issue with staff. So, we have very conservative lawyers who have always, my attitude is, our community did not vote in I-200. That was a statewide initiative, but the people who voted me to the Port Commission, countywide voters, an important value of theirs is equality, and that all people share equally in prosperity. So I'm a lawyer in my day job, but I tell staff and I tell my colleagues that we should not be afraid to challenge I-200 and push back against it. The city of Seattle has been doing a very good job, and they have not gotten sued yet by any contractors. And so we're finally at a point where staff is listening to us, and they're seeing what the city of Seattle is doing and seeing that the city of Seattle is doing it successfully. So we're finally on a path where we're being more aggressive in minority and women-owned, or contracting with minority and women-owned businesses, but I think we could do a much better job. And in terms of transparency, you know, that's also, that is particularly important with the seaport, and, you know, people doing business with the port, knowing where their containers are at all time. It used to be very murky, and I think we can do a better job, you know, both with the public and with our tenants, frankly, and being more transparent about our operations.
Great, thank you. So now we have an opportunity for follow-up questions, and these are 1-minute answers. David and Jason and Liz.
In your introduction, you mentioned the airport and the rapid growth and its role as a job creator. I was just wondering what you see as the primary issues actually affecting the airport, and what your vision is for, you know, what the airport's going to become.
Sure.
Right.
Well, just, I mean, I could probably go on all evening about this, but trying to be really quickly, there's the geographic issue. The airport is on 2.5 square miles of property, and yet last year we were the 9th busiest airport in the country. Other top 10 airports like Dallas-Fort Worth or Denver International are on over 40 square miles. So they're 15 times the size. So we're trying to cram all this rapid growth into this very small footprint. And that's why I'm saying it's going to put even more strain on the communities around the airport, and we have to be more cognizant of addressing those impacts. But it's not only planes flying over your head, it's people driving to the airport. In fact, the bigger constraint to growth is the airport drive more than the airfield. And so we're going to have to be, you know, in the future, get more people into public transit, getting to and from the airport and alternative modes of transportation. You know, when light rail was opened, it was a big deal that we had that station on International Boulevard. I mean, Sound Transit, sorry.
All right, Jason and then Liz.
So I'm sorry, I didn't really answer your
I
question.
may have time for a follow-up.
Well, I think we'll be able to get back to it. So Jason and Liz.
Could you describe some of the intermodal infrastructure that's probably needed with the port?
Well, you know, I think we should go more towards on-dock rail. And, you know, right now, the terminals in Seattle and Tacoma have gotten busy. And there's trucks backed up along the roads. You know, there was just some, you know, a news story about how it's impacting commuters and whatnot. And I think if we use rail more, that's more environmentally friendly as opposed to having a bunch of trucks spewing fumes. And it also gets the trucks off the roads, you know, that are getting congested with commuter traffic. And so I think that's important. You know, when you talk about intermodal, you look at air cargo, and it's interesting. I was co-chair of the Century Agenda Committee, our committee 5 years ago, to set very bold, ambitious growth goals for the port, and one of those growth goals was to triple air cargo. Now we just don't have the space in the airport, so staff is coming to us asking, is that really an important goal? And I'm thinking we can put air cargo maybe at Painfield or, you know, Spokane, Moses Lake, another airport, and address growth that way.
Liz?
And so the primary responsibilities, as I understand it, on the commission have to do with building business and having our port be conducting that business coming in. However, we have one of the 5 top most porous ports in the United States for sex trafficking purposes, and I'm wondering if your commission holds any responsibility for that, what you've done and what you're planning to do.
Very much so, and that's an unfortunate fact of life. We're one of the top 3 container gateways in the country. You know, we're the 9th busiest airport in the country, and we're a trade gateway in all modes. And gateways, you know, bring in and export and import legal cargo, but also illegal cargo. I mean, it's sex trafficking, it's drugs, it's a lot of various things. But you know, I mean, you look at the numbers. There's more human slaves in today's world than there were when slavery was legal. It's just a scourge, and our police department and, you know, the commission has been very vocal about this in terms of, we have signs at the airport, in the bathrooms, in all various languages, alerting people that, you know, if you're being sex trafficked, that's not okay, and here are the numbers to call. And we're also working with other law enforcement around the county, and yeah, it's a really bad issue, and it's really important that we are part of the solution.
So I've got one then, David. So 3 questions ago, you were talking about how people get into the airport and public transportation, and you mentioned the station on International Boulevard, and I wanted to give you another 60 seconds to finish your thought.
Well, you know, one of the impediments people think to more people riding light rail is that, you know, that walk from the station on International Boulevard to the terminal. Now, there were a couple issues when it was built, you know, with the parking garage in the way and 9/11 post-security concerns and whatnot, why it was put on International Boulevard and not next to the terminal. And unfortunately, it is where it is now. So we've been, last year, trying to address things like putting, you know, that walkway was open, we've put in wind guards, we're going to be putting in overhead heaters for, you know, when it's cold in the winter, and we have one of those airport sort of golf cart type vehicles that's now stationed at the light rail station to transport elderly or disabled or families back and forth. So we're doing all we can now to address the issue, but I think at a future date, I'd love to see us, you know, maybe try to figure out locating the station closer. And as
Finish your thought.
well, as the population grows, we're going to have to look at building a second terminal at the airport. So maybe, because we'll be able, starting from a blank slate, be more deliberate about how we plan the interaction of county public transit interacting with the airport terminal.
Dave?
So, and I'll pick up from where you went, because you were telling us when you got on the subject of transit, it was part of the larger picture of your vision for the airport. You also just mentioned the second terminal. I obviously fly in and out of that airport a fair amount of time, and it is a heck of a walk if you choose to take the train. But frankly, the issue on the transit side for me is getting to the train, much more so than the walk from the train. I just had to throw that in. I'll make that my question now. Could you continue telling us about how you see the future of the airport?
Well, you know, with multiple terminal growth is both a blessing and a curse. I mean, I don't know, when you guys travel, I love going to small airports like Burbank or Long Beach. It's so much easier because everything, you can see everything, and as opposed to trying to figure out, okay, where's light rail, where's the baggage claim, where is this, you know, or, you know, if there's 2 terminals, like you go internationally to Heathrow, your cab drops you off at Terminal 1 and you're actually meant to be at Terminal 5. It's a big hassle. So it's that much more difficult to provide good customer service with a larger facility. So I think we're going to have to be much more deliberate in how we plan going forward. You know, if we build this second terminal, it needs to be somehow connected with the entire, you shouldn't have to go back out of security and then down the road to get to the first terminal. There needs to be a connector, you know, behind the secure wall. And we need to have some sort of people mover to get people, you know, from light rail to all the various parts of the airport.
Okay, Liz?
A few months back, our airports were, I kind of refer to it as invaded by our own government, and I want to thank you because your message was the first one I got that morning, saying that you were on your way.
Me personally or the board?
Came from John Creighton,
Oh.
not the board. And so I do want to thank you because you were my very first heads up. That said, I'm wondering how much responsibility the commission has decided to take in terms of the protection of human rights of the people flying into our airport, departing safely from their airplanes and going to their homes regardless of what branch or level of government decides that day that they don't like that.
Well, and thank you for the first part of your comment. I was really proud. I mean, I thought the port took a leadership role. And I credit one of my colleagues, Courtney Gregoire, who I was sitting at home in my underwear thinking I should call up the airport and see what's going on. And she was already down at the airport texting me, hey, John, get down to the airport. But, you know, we rallied the forces. We got in touch with the immigrants' rights, you know, lawyers. We found the families milling about the baggage claim whose you know, family members hadn't come through TSA or customs, I mean. And then we got the governor, the county executive, the mayor, Pramila Jayapal and Susan Del Bene, Del Constantine, and Cyrus Habib. We all had a press conference and we said, this Muslim ban does not comport with our values in the Northwest. So I was really proud about that. But you're right, you know, you hear reports of customs now asking to check people's social media. And you know, I lived in Turkey for 3 years in the 90s, which has now become a dictatorship. And that's the kind of stuff they do in Turkey. And we just cannot have that here. And I'm proud that Washington State is a center of the resistance.
All right, we are out of time. If you want to take 30 seconds for a closing statement.
All right, well, again, thank you for having me. I know it was last minute, so I really appreciate you fitting me in. And, you know, I'm a proud resident of the 36. I live on Queen Anne now. I understand the PCO position is taken, but I would like to get more.
I'd be happy to find you a space.
Let's talk.
Okay, yeah, because I feel in this new age of Trump, even though I'm in this hoity-toity elected position, I need to be active at the grassroots, just along with everyone else. But I didn't mention my endorsements. I mean, it's still early in the campaign, but I have the endorsement of the firefighters, the Sailors Union of the Pacific, the Washington Conservation Voters, which I'm really proud of, the Fishing Vessel Owners Association, a longtime Ballard business, and the Realtors. And I would be honored to have your endorsement as well.
Great, thank you very much.